this is a workshop. The only thing on the agenda is the proposed budget in front of us. So we are in session and we can begin. And Michael, if you'd like to begin the presentation, you've got the floor.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. We
In front of us. So
have provided everyone.
And we can begin. And Michael, if you'd like to begin the presentation, you've got the floor.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. We
In front of us. So
have provided everyone.
And we can begin. And Michael, if you'd like to
Hold on, I'll get something going on.
You've got
We're on a loop.
Okay, well,
We
good
are on a
morning,
loop.
everyone. We in front of us. So
have provided everyone.
And we can begin. And
Okay, get that out of the way. Okay, good morning again. So to go over our budget workshop for fiscal year 2021. Sitting with me is our finance director, Debbie Peacock. This year, with me, only several months I've been here, and we're going to kind of tag team this today. I've tried to include some other directors in on this as we go through this budget. I provided to you a rough draft budget memorandum, kind of outlines things that we're going to talk about today. Also a draft budget summary. I want to kind of read through it, and then we can go and talk about different items. And we're going to kind of jump back and forth between me and Ms. Peacock. So that being said, we'll start off with the general fund. We have the proposed budget was developed by maintaining the millage rate of 8.5914. Based on the property appraiser's estimated value, we should see an increase in property tax revenue. I'll preface by saying that depends on if everybody pays, and we'll see what the effect of COVID has had on our budget. The proposed general fund budget for fiscal year 2021 is $2,595,855. In the memorandum, there's a pie chart that breaks down general fund revenue sources. You will note that there's approximately $962,000 in grant revenue, which is the result of the FDOT MSCOP Central Avenue resurfacing project. Also, the police grants for community justice, community policing, and from the USD for 2 new police vehicles, which we'll talk about later. If you exclude the grant funding projects, the total general fund budget is $1,633,952. Now we're assuming our millage rate does not change. We anticipate $645,000 in property tax revenue, which is roughly 25% of our general fund revenue.
Grants.
So we also gave you a pie chart of the breakdown of the share of revenue spent on each department after non-reoccurring grants are removed from the equation. Okay. The first section we have here talks about ad valorem tax revenue. Ad valorem revenue is affected by 2 variables: property values and millage rate. The table that we provided with you talks about the fiscal year, the taxable value, the millage rate, and then the property tax revenue starting goes back to about 2002. The table shows the property values and millage rate trends since 2002, as well as the resulting property tax revenue budgeted for each year. You can see that the property values peaked in 2008 and declined through 2014. We have seen some steady growth, and we are estimating property tax revenue will be higher than it has ever been. We hope, and like I said, we hope everybody pays their taxes and things are good. Second section is health insurance expenses. Once again, this is always a variable, and it's usually on the upward swing. The budget amount for health insurance for this year is unchanged from the current year at $9,393 per year per full-time employee. We'll not have renewal quotes until the middle of September. We will endeavor to shop for the best possible deal for the staff, but absent a different direction from the City Commission, the proposed budget will stay in place and any additional expenses passed on to the staff. Health insurance cost trends are shown below, and we give a graph, and they just, from about 2014, you start to see them trend upward. Item 3 is items of note in proposed budget. There are also adjustments that are unique to each department, and we'll kind of go through them that correspond with the budget. And I've noted line items in bold. First, the line items we're talking about is the City Commission budget. It's Department 511. Proposed $500 increase to other charges for virtual meetings, awards, and other expenses that may come up. and it's line 112. One of the things, and I'm going to have Debbie, you can jump in at any time. One of the things that we have seen an increase is things like this, virtual meetings. Since we have been going to virtual meetings, there's a cost assigned to that just from the Zoom. Advertising goes up depending on when we have to advertise different places, and also just for even storage of the recordings is one of the things that some of the costs that we're seeing increases on. Next, you have finance and administrative budget. That's Department 513. There's a proposed $500 increase for office suppliers. That's on line 318. Once again, we can go more detail, and Debbie, like I said, you can jump in and pay raise in there. Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I would like to have a pay raise for Sheila. She's taken over more responsibility. She makes $14.23 now. I'd like to raise her up to at least $15, because when I leave this year, she's going to have to take over more and more responsibility and help the new finance director get, transitioned in. And we're still in the middle of payroll and accounts payable with the new program, and we've had quite a bit of difficulties with it, and so I think she deserves to be brought up. It probably should have been done way before this, because she's not just the payroll manager, she's the assistant to the finance director.
And she's handling, she handles HR responsibilities,
Yes.
and there'll be even more that she'll be handling on that
all
end.
of her insurance.
And all the insurance. So just wanted to add that in there. Next, we'll talk about legal counsel. There's no changes to the proposed budget. It's based off last contract renewal for the city attorney. Next is utility billing and customer service, Department 515, proposed $500 increase for office suppliers. Once again, we're trying to get more of, starting to increase what we're reflecting what we're spending on office supplies, because things have gone up and we've needed some additional things there, and they've never adequately, I shouldn't say never, but they haven't been adequately reflected in those lines. We also proposed a $6,899 increase for a new meter reading equipment. The equipment we have is old. It's being phased out. It's not being supported. So we need to add that to it, so we can effectively read our meters, excuse me. Next is planning and zoning, Department 516, proposed $1,500 for planning and zoning consultant review. Once again, as we transition, we've gone through this where we've had consultants come in or we've had one where we've just needed to transition to look at some of these complicated planning and zoning items that we've had, and some of them have continued from previous administration to now. We've also proposed $250 for legal, additional legal that we need. And that's really for advertising. Thank you, Debbie. Other general government, Department 519. This is kind of a lengthy thing, and we'll talk about it. It touches on several items. A review of the cost analysis for workman's comp, auto liability, and property insurance was completed to update the assess and the assets and employees for each department, and then reassesses the relative insurance costs. As a result, line 206 shows a small decrease to the worker comp for various general fund administrative personnel, as well as an increase to line 215 for auto liability, property and liability for the general fund assets assigned to the administrative functions. Because of their unique impact on the insurance costs, the police, fire, and street department budgets each reflect their specific impact on the cost of these insurances. There will likely be an additional auditing services required for what is referred to as a single audit because of the FDOT MSCOP funded projects. Once they go past a certain threshold, then it triggers us to do a separate single audit on anything. We'll also see this on the CRA. We expect that this project, the SCOP project, will triple the dollar amount threshold for a single audit. And the FDOT MSCOT, and when we're talking about that project, is for Central Avenue, is budgeted in the streets section, line 348. The CRA property values continue to improve, with the CRA budget showing a total of $1,390,206. The city share of this budget is $65,763, which is up about a little over $5,000 from last year, as shown in line 231. We are seeing an increase in property tax revenue, but most of that increase is required to be deposited into the CRA fund, with the increase of taxable value falling within the North and South CRA. The increment money is required to be used for purposes that directly benefit the CRA districts and technically should not be used to offset routine general fund expenses. However, the positives is still outweigh the negatives, even if you see the increased emphasis on improving the CRA districts as negative. First, it must be recognized that we should expect the county share of the property taxes deposited in the CRA will double. We'll see on that. Second, the CRA funds can be used to offset administrative costs incurred in the general fund. Third, improve streetscape and park facilities inside the CRA are legitimate expenses. Fourth, because of our good timing with they did the North and South CRAs, they'll start looking at financial long-term impactful improvements such as water and sewer. That's something we're working towards in a bigger picture of getting a master utility plan for addressing some of these issues. That'll be coming up towards the end of this year. Also, it'll be discussed later in section D. Jump to law enforcement, Department 521. Law enforcement budget, most significant change is due to an increase in the auto property liability insurance, line 269. We're seeing that this auto property liability insurance, we've seen a dramatic increase, and that's because we have a couple of outstanding cases. I cannot go into details, but they're outstanding cases that we have, and they will be continuing. Other increases in expenses will be offset by the reimbursement from the grants that they're talking about for the cars and for the community policing.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Next, we'll go to fire control, Department 522. The only noticeable increase in expenses are the auto property liability insurance. Once again, you're going to see that theme of auto property and liability insurance increasing, and then added office training computer. One of the things that the fire department needs is a new computer over there to handle their training and also their record keeping. I was hoping the chief would be on. He is on duty in Daytona right now, so I was hoping he could try to jump on, and he might do that during the meeting, so I'm going to try to monitor for that. Also, continuing on to fire control, while there are no significant changes to the proposed budget for fire control, it is recommended that the city consider setting aside funds now for future replacement of the current fire engine. It's estimated at $500,000. At the end, it's the end of its life cycle is 2031. So right now, the fire truck is 8 years old. We're starting to think that we need to put some funds in there to try to get as much as we can, so we can take a bigger bite of that elephant when it comes when we need to purchase a new engine. And we could talk about that more later. Streets, Department 541. The Streets Department is showing a decrease in expenses due to the removal of the one-time tree maintenance addition to last year's budget, line 341, and the removal of the $10,000 for speed humps, which will be implemented under last year's budget, which means we're going to try to take care of that. We're working on the speed humps now. We're just waiting for signage, and then we're looking to get those in prior to the end of this fiscal year. Lastly, we have parks. It's Department 571. And there's no significant changes in this department that we can talk about right now as far as this report. Section B, we talked about Better Place Plan. The Better Place Plan currently has $438,000 in the fund and expects to earn another $130,000 in the next fiscal year. To date, we have budgeted funds for the demo at Cypress Avenue and ball field lights at Harry Banks Park in the amount of $75,500, line 642. Also included line 643 for fire station improvements, approximately $5,000. We continue to have several needs and wants that could benefit from this money. Some capital improvement and general improvement could benefit, and we've broken them down by equipment and improvements. So we talked about a pole barn at the Public Works yard for $25,000, and then a bucket truck van. We need a bucket truck, and we need several pieces of equipment for Public Works, total for $50,000. That's about $75,000 in equipment from Better Place. Also, we have other improvements. We have rehabbing City Hall at $75,000 to $100,000. Rehabbing the police department, $20,000. We have the deck at the beach pier at 20,000, and then the Fletcher Park Trail. That's kind of unknown now. We're on the list to get phase 2 of Fletcher Park. We put in for a grant for that. We're on the list, but that's kind of an unknown thing right now. Even more significantly, the Better Place Plan Fund, along with the CRA fund, could also use to finance more expensive infrastructure projects such as roads, including streetscape, water, and sewer. Going back to that whole master plan I talked about with utility improvements, which include road improvements, and they also talked about some kind of park improvements. Given the multiple options for these funds, not all of which can be completed with these monies, so the Better Place Plan budget remains simple and does not include any carryover from the current fund. Once again, we're going to develop a more defined long-term plan for this fund and make budget amendments later as necessary. Next, we'll talk about is tax increment, the CRA. The budget policy for the central CRA has generally been to break it down along the following percentages: 50% brick and mortar, repair and maintenance, 20% administrative, 50% festivals and events, and 50% promotions. Given the fact that the improving values in the central CRA and the CRA expansion and areas has increased the revenue for the CRA funds to over $139,000 for this tax year. We are looking into contracting with an outside landscaping and maintenance company to take care of high-profile streetscape and parks within the CRA. While this will relieve the day-to-day efforts of our public works and parks employees, it still presents a legitimate opportunity to enhance the curb appeal and effectiveness of our city, a primary goal of the CRA plan. Finally, $2,000 has been added to line 664 to cover the expense of the electrical bill for lighting on Central Avenue. Next is utility, or proprietary funds. All the funds shown show adjustments to the administrative fee paid to the general fund. There were administrative fee adjustments that reflect the removal of the new financial software costs and any increases in utility billing expenses. A removal adjustment was made to the gas department credit for IT assistance. The table below, we've included a table that shows the methodology for determining the administrative fees, and it kind of breaks it down by percentage and total impact on the general fund, and then a breakdown for gas, water, and sewer. Under that, we had the gas fund, Department 532. Several line item adjustments are proposed to reflect actual expenditures in fiscal year 2020 and are expected to continue in the next fiscal year. There's a note there that says there will need to be an amendment to the fiscal year 2020 fiscal year budget that will be an increase to revenue and expenses for the gas main relocation and clearing project in the amount of $86,800 to be transferred from gas reserves. That's a project that's going on now. Anything to add on that, David Pico? Okay, so we'll have that ordinance for the next meeting. Right.
I'm sorry, what ordinance for the next meeting?
No, it's a resolution.
Not an ordinance.
Sorry,
About
for that $86,000, $87,000 for the gas main project.
Even though we knew that it was coming out, we didn't know when, so it wasn't budgeted in this year's, but we have started it. And so now we have to do an amendment to the budget to put it in there so we can show the expense. It'll have to come from his, the gas renewal and replacement, and to cover this because they don't have the funds otherwise.
okay, thanks. I just didn't catch all that the first time it went through.
Okay, so going down on the last couple of sections, Water Fund, Department 533. There's a significant proposed decrease of revenue and expenses over last fiscal year due to the completed purchase of the new financial billing software, with the cost being taken from the water and wastewater revenue reserves. Also, there is an increase to expenses for auto property liability insurance, once again, on line 508. Other line item adjustments are proposed to reflect actual expenditures in fiscal year 2020 and are expected to continue in the next fiscal year. Sewer Fund, Department 534. While the overall sewer budget has not changed from last fiscal year, there were decreased adjustments made to several line items to account for the increase in other professional services for sludge hauling. That is an increase that we just keep seeing, and I've seen it since I've been here. Also, lastly, we just included this part as the volunteer fire department. As of last summer, the Crescent City Volunteer Fire Department has formed a nonprofit entity and obtained their 501c3 status. As a result, this budget item has been eliminated, and the other volunteer money currently residing in accounts under the city's name have been placed in new accounts under the direct control of the nonprofit. So we just had it in there. Next year, you will not see this in the budget at all.
Right.
That concludes the budget synopsis and summary. We can kind of take it from there. I guess we can, Meg, if you want to do that.
Well, I had a couple of questions, unless somebody else has some.
Go ahead.
Thanks. It's just my observation, and I think it's important to have that overview. I really liked the budget memo. I thought it was pretty clear. But I noticed the very first paragraph A about general fund, the way Michael calculates this, he's giving us the idea that our property tax revenue ad valorem taxes are roughly 25% of our general fund revenue. But that's for this year with the grants. If we backed out the grants, I think ad valorem tax revenue, if my math is right, would be about 39%. Then I guess I have some other questions, but probably, well, I do have a question about the volunteer fire department funds transfer. We've run into this locally a couple times. I don't know what the origin of the original $2,000 in the fire department account was. But if it goes to a nonprofit, what does the nonprofit bylaws say about, distribution of funds? I mean, we really don't know anything about that, but we've already transferred the funds. And if the nonprofit dissolves, where do those funds necessarily go? So it might be helpful to get some clarification on that.
This was from the audit last year. The auditors made these suggestions. We were supposed to try to get it cleaned up before the end of the year, and we couldn't get the money transferred around in time. Okay. And so they put notes in the audit last year about this. That money was theirs. They earned it.
I see.
The money that was in the bank. So it was perfectly legitimate to move it and let them have it, because it wasn't the city's money. We were just overseeing it at that time.
Okay, I'm not saying it wasn't legitimate. I just want to understand a little bit more about it, because it was just a very brief item. So that's helpful. Thank you. And
Anybody else?
That's all.
Michael, do you have anything else to add? This is the only thing on the agenda, so
yeah,
might be a short meeting.
Other things that I'm going to talk. Debbie, going to have Debbie talk about some other items.
Oh, we're not going through usually we go through the draft budget by lines, because I have questions about.
Well, that's what I figured we would do. Yeah, if you have questions about it, let's kind of jump to questions about where we're at, and then we'll kind of, when we get to that section, we'll kind of talk about a couple of things that we have.
Okay.
So if anybody has questions, we can go through that. I mean,
right, but I'm saying the next item on the agenda is you were actually going to go through the 25 pages of the budget, right? And kind of each department. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I was kind of waiting. Do we have any questions? We kind of tackle it that way.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you have questions, because we can go through the line, but I bet you people have highlighted items that they want to discuss and have questions about. We'll add clarification to it. How's that?
I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, sure. That's the best way to do it.
Okay.
Right. Because I have revenue questions.
Sure.
Okay. Just taking it from the top on the ad valorem, you're giving us the figure that ad valorem revenue will increase by about $40-something thousand. And that's from our county property appraiser.
Yeah, that's what we're estimating.
Okay. So, because if you look up into the non-exempt assessed value, I may be reading this wrong, or there may be a typo. It looks like if you go to line 2 at the top, it looks like our actual assessed value has gone down a couple $100,000, but somehow with the same millage, we wind up with a $40,000 increase.
Okay. Go ahead.
But
Yeah.
you're pretty secure about the figure of that's been transmitted to you for the 645,000.
These are from the reports that we turned in to the property appraiser, and they approved, they've signed off on these, and it's the way they have, they have a spreadsheet for it to be figured. It figured it at 643,000.
Okay, because when you look up on line 2, the actual figure for non-exempt assessed value is a little bit less than it was last year. But that's all I'm saying. If your figure is from the property appraiser, then that's good. A couple of things that I really had a question about is the local option 6-cent gas tax. That shows the same amount all the way across in line 7 for the past year, the current year, and then the year to come that we're talking about the budget for. But aren't we either experiencing currently, or I don't know how often we get our gas tax revenue money, aren't we either experiencing or expecting a drop in collections from the gas tax because the price of gas has gone down?
Well, right now our revenue shows $39,118 that we've received
For the current year?
Have another month that we will
Okay.
get revenue coming in, so we're hoping we'll meet our budget. We might be a little bit under, a couple $1,000s under what we were budgeted, but as of right now, that's why we didn't change it, because.
Okay, because obviously the price in gas is an impact of the whole COVID downturn. And then somewhere, I can't find the line right now, and I apologize, but my eyesight's not too good. Somewhere there's a $66,000 line item, I thought, for revenue sharing from the state of Florida. Where do we find our revenue sharing? Don't we have that?
Just a minute, let's look.
Is that 47? Line 47?
Now, 147,
Just 47.
Yes,
Oh,
Judy's absolutely right. It's line 47.
Yeah.
I noticed that's the same all the way across, and it's been in the papers that the state is planning to reduce revenue sharing. I know the League of Cities said the last revenue estimating conference was last Friday, I believe, or no, it was August 14th. Anyway, have we received any word about actual reductions in revenue sharing? Or have we been communicated with about that?
We have not. We keep talking about it. They talk about a decrease, but we have not gotten any concrete number or anything on that.
Right,
Again,
and then
it's another thing. We just keep the line across.
And we're at 56,000 right now.
for
Right.
the current year.
Yes, for the current year.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did read that the State Revenue Estimating Conference is estimating over $5 billion decrease for state funds for the next 2 years. And that works out, I'm just ballparking, somewhere around 3% of the state budget. They're looking at state budget reductions. So I'm a little bit nervous about any grant funds that we might be anticipating from the state. And then the final item I had in revenue, back up on line 9. Last year we carried over 76,250. Part of that was for some things that were undone or just unexpended monies that we assigned. We put into the budget to do something with those. some of those still didn't get done. I know we had $15,000 in the tree budget for one-time maintenance. The last I communicated with the finance director was that about $6,000 or $7,000 of that was obligated. So there would be about $8,000 left. And my suggestion is that we carry over unused funds from the tree budget because we have a huge backlog of maintenance on that. And as well, the planning and zoning code update that was specifically in the budget from last year. And I have the memo and the minutes from, I believe it was the August 12th meeting. And that has not been accomplished. So I would suggest that we carry that over also. And the speed bumps was the other item that we allocated unused monies for. And I think that's great if we can finish it this year, but I'd rather see it done right than rushed. So to me, I would like to make sure that we allow any money allocated to speed bumps to be carried over so that we, the project could be finished without, undue hurrying.
And we're not on the speed bump issue. We're not rushing to get it done. We're
Right.
just spending it in this quarter, and we have it. Like I said, we'll get the signs, we'll get the bumps, we'll get the speed bumps in, and that'll be done.
Okay.
Just a note, last night on the news, Florida is experiencing a 60% drop in tourism, which is going to affect us revenue-wise everywhere. That's a big wallop.
Big love. Michael,
Yes.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
okay. I tell you, when we do this budget, to me, a budget is less like a toys for Christmas around a tree. Everybody can't get what they want.
Right.
So I really think what we need to do is we got in the extra spending that we are spending, we need to kind of stand on it a little while till we see where our finance, how it's going to be coming in from the state. Because the federal government don't send it down, the state is not going to get it. And it is a big downfall in the state.
Yeah.
So we better be very careful for all the extra gifts that we want under the Christmas tree. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't try to get some of the things that we need to carry on, but we need to try to kind of stand on our spending.
That wish list of good things that Michael has in this, that's exactly what I was thinking. If something is needed, like the pole barn, probably, or the bucket truck, pick one of those. And I think the rest of the things can just go, but that's probably for another meeting, another time. But I agree with you, Mr. Banks. We need to be very careful because I think we have no idea how much less is coming our way, possibly as things unfold.
We can always make a budget amendment later in the year and
Yes.
move money.
Yep.
And for any projects like this, after we see where we're going to stand and what's coming in, we do have money in general fund, but we still have another month and a half of expense coming out of that. And we don't have much revenue coming in because we've almost collected everything that we're going to get this year. And we would like to put some money back into the reserves, but everything that you want and we make this budget higher is less money that we're going to be able to put into the reserves also. I mean, if it's want to be spent this year, that's fine, but we still have to look at tomorrow.
Right. And to your point, Commissioner Banks, and I include these things. Once again, we have what we want and what we need, and that's where this process comes in to figure out. I can lay it out there and tell you this is what we need, but we do have to make some hard and fast choices right now for long term if revenues go down or they're not what they're supposed to be estimated at. So you're right. We can look at that and just take some items off and push them. That's part of the capital planning too. You might need it, but might need it 2 years from now.
part of this
Right.
25,000 that's in the carryover from prior year actually is for the police car. We had to replace, we're going to replace, and we had to pay part of it, even though we're going to get a grant for it. We received insurance money for the one that was destroyed. And so we've been like holding that back so that we could put it towards these cars if we get the grant. So
Right.
like 20,000, almost $20,000 of that 25,000 that I put in here for right now actually belongs to the police department for the police car if we get the grant.
Right.
Well, that's things we need. You know, I'm just talking about some things that we might consider on till we see how we're gonna fare out.
Right.
Speaking of.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Commissioner- Right, I was going to ask to be recognized. Thank you. I have a note here on page 5 of the memo under B, Better Place Plan, where Michael is talking about rehab to City Hall. He has $75,000 to $100,000 for that. In terms of COVID, you know, we know that City Hall needs rehab, but one thing that a lot of private organizations, I think, are doing, and one thing we might well want to consider is having our air conditioning updated so that, you know, it screens for viruses or that it has the best possible circulation. I mean, that I don't know what the condition of the air conditioning system is, but ventilation is a very, very important thing in virus control. And I'm sure Michael probably knows a lot more about that than I do. But that would seem to be something important for us to try to take care of and make sure that the building is in as best situated as possible to deal with whatever comes in future, because they're saying, you know, that they're not sure we're ever going to totally get rid of this.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, please go ahead.
I was talking to our county commissioner on this end, and he says that they're pretty sure that the Putnam County, in other words, they got $3.5 million already, but they got that kind of allocated. But what's going to take place? So it's very important, talking to Michael, that our staff, that we keep every receipt and everything that we need to do to make our around it, our spend in our town towards COVID-19. We need to log that and documentation and keep it. So when that money come available, we have receipts and we can file and we get the fund back.
Right.
Now, I was told that, and
Yes.
I'm hoping that's so. And you know, like Commissioner Vito said, if we need to put something on there, if we have the fund, spend it, but keep our receipts.
Yep, that's a great point. If we can recover it
Oh yeah.
from the CARES Act, that would be even better.
Well, and that's how that works. It's a reimbursement.
You're right.
2 phases, what you've spent already, and then what you propose to spend. But once again, it is a reimbursement. So if you want to go out and spend $100,000 on upgrades, things like that, we're going to have to spend the money, and then hopefully we get reimbursed. So.
Right, but it's always good to get reimbursed. If it's
Correct.
allowable. That would be wonderful.
Exactly, I agree.
So,
Okay.
so I am very concerned about the air conditioning, and
We
Commissioner West knows that at least in the meeting room, and I don't know about the other parts of the building, it blows inconsistently, wouldn't you say? And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I believe there was an upgrade when we did the roof about 2 years ago.
There was an upgrade to the AC 2 years ago.
We got a new one.
But it's like we need maintenance, you know, vent
Yep.
maintenance, things like that. But yeah, the units themselves.
Right,
As
but
far-
there are things you can do for virus.
As far as like the pole barn and the bucket truck and so on, boy, that bucket truck is sorry. It spends half its life in the shop, and it costs money to run a city, and it's not a extra. It's not pork, and I think some things we just need to do. As far as budget shortfalls, you know, you always have to prepare for the worst. There are places where we could trim back a little bit if we need to. But we do have reserves, so we're not going to be caught off guard if, and I know the state isn't going to, would give us plenty of heads up notice if they're going to change revenue sharing and so on.
Michael, are we okay with reserve generators? Looks like we may have a hurricane coming in a couple of weeks, possibly.
Possibly we could use a few more. I wish our director was supposed, I wanted him to be here. Yeah, we do need a couple. Most of the generators that we need right now are for lift stations.
Yes.
That's for hardening the lift stations because they're critical during these, usually the area of failure.
Yes.
And it's something that you can't afford. So
We have a portable generator for a lift station if need be.
we do. We're covered that way because we use, yeah.
Right.
Does anybody remember what one of the generators cost? A portable? No, I guess not. Okay.
We'll get some, yeah, not offhand.
They're not cheap.
They're not cheap.
They're not cheap.
Yep.
And we've stayed pretty well on top of it. We've replaced pumps and so on as needed.
Well, I sit up on the high ridge, we do, but if you're down in a low spot, you're a home that really wants the city to have that generator for.
You're right.
Because that can just, you know, destroy somebody's house. We used to live in a low spot and it was worrisome. So,
All right, let's keep this on budget now.
right.
Who else has got something?
Budget. I just wanted to note on page 9, line, I think it's 239, just observation. So we have the usual $500 allocation for the Crescent City Library. And I think we all got a letter about that from the library board. And as well, I had a question about, it says chamber 500. It's not clear. Is that for our chamber membership?
I believe so.
Touch the,
Okay, so that's,
I know we just write $500 check to the Chamber of Commerce. I have to go look and see what it is, and then we did do the library
that's
this
the
week.
membership, and the library we did this week.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and I
Right.
signed the check on that. And you know, boy, if we're paying the chamber $500, and I don't want to get too far off track.
Right.
And I'm an ex officio. I don't get a chance to vote. And boy, I sure wish I had a chance to vote this past meeting yesterday, day before yesterday. But anyway,
well, we've had someone from the chamber come speak to us twice. And when they spoke, this is why I'm asking about this. They said we're a member, but we don't get updates, minutes, information. So I just wanted to clarify, if we're a member, why don't we get to vote?
well, one thing they pointed out, if you are an ex officio, such as myself, and I assume Michael, I'm not sure, you might get an agenda, but you don't get the packet. And I don't know about the minutes. I don't recall getting minutes either.
We can have those sent out.
Well,
I
if
don't-
we could, right, I'm sorry, if we could clarify that, because I can't remember his name, the young man who came and spoke to us,
Yes.
he might have been mistaken, but I'm pretty sure he told us we were members. It would be helpful to
You are a
know.
member. Yes.
Okay, so it would be helpful to know actually what the benefits of that membership is and to make sure we get them, because I didn't know, I found out by chance even that our city manager goes to the chamber meetings. We just don't usually hear too much. So, you know, I'm happy to support them, but I want to make sure that we're getting the appropriate, you know, information and value, and that if we're entitled to vote, we get to vote.
Okay, again, that might be something to talk about, but let's keep it to the budget as moving
Well,
forward?
Right. Well, Mayor, that's what I'm saying. If we're spending the $500, then, what exactly is it for? Signing bonus, blah, 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 blah. I see it on line 251 says signing bonus.
Mhm.
What do we do with that?
That's for our police officers, I believe, is it not?
We're in law
Yes.
enforcement, yes.
Okay, they're under law enforcement. All right, so that's good because we increased it. Okay, sorry, law enforcement budget, blah, blah. Oh, and so the one thing I wanted clarification on, I guess, the community policing grant 282, from what Debbie Peacock was saying, that all would go towards a vehicle expense. Is that correct?
Which one?
No, and no, she's talking about the community
No.
policing. That is not going to the vehicles.
Okay. What would it go? Do we have the grant? For one thing, is it just applied for, or do we have it? And regardless, what would that $12,000 be able to accomplish for us?
Chief, you can chime in.
Just briefly.
Commissioner, I know things are tight. One of the things I've been asking for since I got here, so I think we could sorely use another officer on the police department. And we were hoping to use some of that money maybe to go ahead and get us the 7th man, so we can go ahead and augment the police department and get us back up to.
Okay, that's fine. So it would be to supplement personnel.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you very much. So, and that's separate from any monies for the vehicle. This officer's not here. And I'm not sure where this is either. I was a little, I was curious. I think the income from the water department shows that it's relatively stable. It's the same amount for past, present, and the next year. But the month-over-month reports that we get seem to show that billings are less for the water department, that, billings have kind of decreased when you compare this year to last year.
Well, one of the things that we're looking to do in the next fiscal years, we're looking to look at rates.
Okay. So, because I've been asking, and I don't know that we've resolved it. Right, that was line 472, water sales. I've been asking for the reason that our water billings have gone down, whether it's because people are conserving or do we actually have fewer water customers. But I know that we were advised by the reviewer that we should revise our rates, and that we were told we should be charging more.
Well, it looks like the same to me, 330 across the board from 2018, 2019, and 2020,
Yeah, but at 265 or 266,000 right now. We still have August and September to go in there. So we're not going to make the 330,000 that we budgeted. You are correct about that. That's why they suggested that we raise our water rates.
Right, Mayor, that's what I was saying. The highlight of the budget for the year shows the same last year, this year, and next year. But when you compare every month, the report that we get, it keeps showing that the billings are reduced this year from last year. So Debbie is saying they are down, and Michael is putting in the same amount because we've been recommended to increase our rate. So that makes sense about why it's the same.
I know some of the billing is down. Talking to Michael, is that I guess with this whole COVID with people getting laid off and so on, that some people are behind on paying their bills.
That is true. Plus, also we deferred terminating service to help the citizens
Right.
through COVID. Now it's the time when we've stopped that. We started to do disconnects again, but that's gonna,
And our schools aren't open.
and the school's not open. Once again, huge, you get a huge commercial user
Uh-huh.
for our utilities. That's another thing that affects what we're collecting. So
Right. I mean, we have no control over any of that.
no, we don't.
I just want to make sure that we're, obviously Debbie knows what she's got in the collections, that we have our minds around what the situation is. And then, I mean, the next question that I have is for the very last page that has to do with the CRA. So I don't know if anybody else has questions before that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, just let's see. Here we go. All right. So we have in there for the CRA position for a community redevelopment person. That's good. I notice on line 668 for this year, we had 10,150 budgeted for festivals and special events. How much of that did we actually spend? And because I'm assuming that some of it we're not spending.
No,
Did we spend any of it, really, is what I'm saying? Or if we spent anything, what did we spend?
We do. We're just getting that updated number.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I can't see anybody, so
That's okay.
it's not like being in the meeting room.
what we were talking about moving that money around because we do have a single office.
Okay, so we've spent $2,000 out of that money. We
Right.
are looking to take or use about 4,000 of that because we're going to need a single audit for the CRA come this next budget. So
Okay, and we have to have a single audit for the CRA. Why?
thresholds.
Yeah.
Oh, because of our
That's what
revenue.
we're gonna do that.
Okay, well, I heard that. Okay, I think I might have confused that with another issue. So you're saying because our revenues have increased, we have to have the single audit.
Correct.
It's kind of a credit check
Sure.
because you do the audit every year and then say 6 months later, we're applying for a grant, which triggers that we have to have a single audit. So they do a quick audit. It costs money.
Right.
I wish it was as easy as doing a credit check when you buy a car, but it's not. It costs money, a
Right.
lot of money. So that might even be done multiple times a year.
Right, so wait, so what, I'm sorry, I'm not quite getting it. Are we having to have the single audit because we had a grant for the CRA?
No, it's just because of the increase in revenue and it's went
That-
above the threshold. I don't know the dollar amount of the threshold, but the auditors told us last year that we would have to have a CRA single audit this year.
Okay, I want to make sure I heard you right. So basically, the more money we make, the more money they make us spend, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, so that would leave maybe a couple thousand, and then, I don't know, realistically speaking, so in future, like we have, well, I guess we have increased income from the CRA, but is that $4,000 provided for in the future year's budget, or will we have to do a budget amendment or something?
What line are you looking at?
Well, what I'm saying is Debbie Peacock, our finance director, is saying that of the unspent $8,000 from festivals and special events, that they were going to take that and use it for our single CRA requirement. So I'm saying, do we see a line item for 2021 for single CRA expenditure? I mean, single audit expenditure, sorry.
We will, when we redo the budget, I'll show that $4,000 up there.
Okay.
We'll show it in a line. You'll see it there.
Okay, so basically that this is a draft budget and that's a change that's going to come.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
I think you
Right.
referred to,
We're going to put in other charges. It's a line right above it, 667.
okay, because the way the finance director is explaining it, it sounds like with our increased income, it's going to be a continuing cost. And so basically you folks are going to update to reflect that. And then also on line 674 for the facade grant, that have we spent any of the $5,000 for the facade grant?
No, not
No.
this year.
Okay, because for CRA, you know, hopefully we will hire someone and they will be able to help with things like that.
Correct.
You know, I don't know what usually happens to get the word out about the grant. And then just one thing that I wanted to say about CRA expenditures and the money that we talked about last year to update the planning and zoning code. It's not on the website now, but the city manager did provide to me a copy of our CRA plan.
Yeah, it is on the website. It's on the website now.
Okay, well, one day you'll tell me where to find it, but for right now.
And the CRA, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't there. So I used the paper copy. There's a lot in the CRA that, you know, we haven't had a CRA meeting in quite a few months. One of the items in the central CRA says specifically in the CRA plan, one thing we're supposed to be doing is that there is a misalignment in planning and zoning, and that it was anticipated that the CRA, I guess, and the city would be looking at the planning and zoning code to make sure that it was compatible with what we need to do in the future. So that is an identified need in the CRA plan. And as well, I found my memo from last year. I had discussed this with Mr. Kennedy, and he had said that we do need to update our planning and zoning code, not just to codify it, but to update it to make sure that the land uses are consistent and get us where we want to go, to be a walkable city without traffic conflicts. I think that was identified in the CRA plan. So I do think that we need to make sure that we put the money that we identified last year into accomplishing that objective, both for our central town core and the objectives of the CRA. That's right in there.
Michael?
And I'll be happy to, I'll bring that to Michael's attention, and I'll try to highlight it and send it around to everybody.
Okay.
Anybody else?
What would it cost to add a new officer, another police officer? Michael, do you have a?
We do. I could maybe just getting that number. We're roughly talking. We're talking 60,000.
60 to 70,000.
It's 60 to 70,000.
Is it that high?
Yeah. Well, you're talking about salary, which
Insurance,
Yeah, I was hearing the number 50, but it may have gone up.
insurance, uniforms.
You've got, yeah, and you know, I wish we could pay them more. But retirement, pension, that all of that goes into that number. So it's
Right.
X for their salary, and then you've got benefits and pension and insurance, all of those things. So.
Right. And I think I've mentioned this to the city manager before. Our CRA is not a wealthy CRA. We don't have a huge amount of money in it. But I learned at the conference last year that you can, if you put it in your plan, you can use CRA money for community policing and code enforcement, specifically within the boundaries of your CRA. And actually, that's where a lot of our commercial burglaries occur. So I don't know that we could fund it totally from that budget, and we would have to amend our plan unless it's already in there somewhere. But that is one source.
Possibly from that and from our general revenue. We could find a way to do part there and part here and put it together. I think that's a really big need right now.
Yeah, I've talked to, I think the chief, but certainly Michael, about maybe reorganizing the police department a little bit, where I see maybe some funds could come from.
So,
Reorganizing it, Mayor?
no, it's not reorganizing it. It's more like if we had a new officer, can we kind of have an officer that's not just an officer, also does code enforcement duties, things like that.
Like it once was.
No.
Can you really do that?
Yes.
That's the way it was.
Well, you can have code enforcement.
Yeah.
Well, right now, code enforcement is under the police department.
Right, but I guess what I'm asking is, can the same person carry a gun and be responsible for traditional law enforcement and at the same time be the person to do the code enforcement? Because it's a different level of expertise. To me, maybe a police officer could address immediate violations. But I think I remember when code enforcement was done by a
Right.
uniformed officer, but if they came to your house, I don't think they were wearing a gun belt or whatever. I think, and maybe the chief could speak to this, there seemed to be a differentiation of responsibilities. I'm not clear on that, but it looked a little bit different.
What
Yeah,
I'm concerned about is if you get someone that's just code enforcement, then you don't have a police officer when there's a call and you need that person to go out. Am I right, chief?
So, Commissioner West, some agencies do it different. Some, they're cross-trained. You can have, it is, Commissioner DeVito's right, there's different training, different knowledge, expertise. I believe the mayor said it was done here in the past.
Yeah.
It was,
Bob Chair was the code enforcement, if I am not mistaken.
You're
right.
right.
Yeah.
I think he had a different uniform even. I mean,
I think he started and Harry, maybe you remember, I think he started out in code enforcement and then became an officer,
Yeah.
but kept the duties or something. I wasn't here then, so maybe you can speak to that.
He kept the duties.
Hey, I've had experience in this, not that I've been in law enforcement, several municipalities I've talked to, they have law enforcement doing code enforcement. You really just need, having a code enforcement designation through the state is great and it helps, but you really just need to be enforcing our code of ordinances. That's really what it gets down to. Writing a violation, as long as we're staying and notifying in time and all those things are done, under state statute 162, we're fine to have anybody doing code enforcement. I'm not saying anybody can, but we can have law enforcement do that. That's what they do. They enforce our code of ordinances. They enforce the state laws and things like that. So,
right, but
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, please.
I think we going the wrong way about it. I think what we need to do, I think what we're trying to budget is get money for another police officer.
Yes, sir.
That code alone, just hire another police officer. And I really think we need that. I'm kind of like Commissioner West, we really need another officer. So I think anywhere possible that, and I'm pretty sure by looking at this budget, we can come up with that to hire another police officer. Just let
And I'm concerned if you make duties the code officer, then that gets too watered down. I'd rather have just a police officer deal with codes in another manner.
Well, the tough part is coming up with the money for another police officer. I mean, I agree, but where are you going to get the money? So I was just thinking outside the box where we could do something like that, where the money could come from.
well, I mean, Mayor, may I address
Go ahead.
that issue? Yeah, to me, it just seems like we're a little short this year because we've identified a $25,000 carryover. This is basically, except for one raise that's been requested, a no raise budget for staff. Is that not correct?
that is correct.
Right. We could, as far as I know, we couldn't pull money from the CRA unless we did a plan amendment. And I have nothing against that. I think that would be great. And we potentially could even fund code enforcement activities in the CRA area from the CRA, I think, if we did that amendment. But I think it would be a tall order without robbing Peter to pay Paul, unless Michael and Debbie Peacock can come up with something to fund a $70,000 salary. And boy, would I love to do so. I mean, if they can do that, great. I'm just looking over the budget and I just don't necessarily see it.
Well, just to clarify, that's not $70,000. They're not making that as a salary.
It's not
Oh, I
their
know. I'm
salary.
talking about the entire, you
Right.
have budget
Right.
for everything.
Right.
Oh, no, I mean, the officers, if they're listening, they know that.
Chief, would there be a car for another officer to use?
Part of the grant.
I'm sorry, Mayor?
Would there be a car for another officer if we hired them?
Yeah, the way we're working it now, we should be able to have a car. And if not, if we would even need to pull them, we'd have to pull them.
Right.
Well, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
how many officers did Crescent City Department start out? Didn't we have several in the beginning?
Chief, you were telling me, go ahead.
Well,
Chief.
throughout, what I've seen was that I've been here throughout the time and the budgeting and the ups and downs. At one time, you were a 13-man police department with a K-9 officer.
Right.
You know, but that's when times were good. So you are, I will say this is the smallest your police department's ever been since I can date back to any paperwork I can find from previous administrations. And
What's our total now?
Five?
5 and 6.
Well,
Six with you?
Yes, sir.
well, to me, we had 7 officers, I know. Back some while ago.
Right.
So,
But,
you
You
know,
know-
so I don't think, I think we can find the money.
Well, and we're in better shape than we were now with Chief Carmen. He's really put the brakes on the turnover we used to have. And during the first 2 years that I was mayor, I don't think we were ever fully staffed.
No, because they leave.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's some stability now that we can build on.
Well, and thank you, Mayor, for that. And if I can bring up something, I noticed is a budget thing. One of the things we're doing to retain these officers, we were giving them a lot more training than they were getting in the past. Some of it's been hard to do with the COVID and the social unrest, and we've had to keep them here. And the other agencies that were offering the training, because of social distancing, we haven't been able to send them. Once this is hopefully over, settles down, we will keep doing that training and with the sheriff's office. And we still are reaching out to other agencies to help us.
Right.
If you notice, I've reached out to FHP lately, and agencies they like helping, but they're in the same boat we are.
Right.
They have to deal with their other stuff. So their resources for giving us help has been limited. And the sheriff's office has always been great, as you know.
You know, with that statue incident we had, 2 or 3 weeks ago, it's not an incident. They had another gathering up there. Our police department helped out. And then in turn, a few weeks earlier, they helped us out. So the teamwork that you have with the local law enforcement has really gone a long way to change things and has made our city, I think, a lot safer. And
absolutely.
thank you for that.
Well, thank
Right.
you.
And Mayor, if I could just say one more thing about the chief.
Go ahead.
I remember last year, one of his first year, second year, I mean, he's found a lot of no-cost training for our officers, which has saved us a lot of money.
Yep.
And as well, you've alluded to this, but he's created a great sense of team, both in the office and with the other agencies. So yes, we are safer. And thank you.
Absolutely. All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. What else do
I'll
we
do
have?
all of that.
Would you like to be recognized, Judy?
I said I will ditto all those
Oh.
comments. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
And
what
your
are we-
staff.
We're understaffed.
I'll wait.
This whole discussion came from the mayor just to try to streamline that issue and try to get a response, get him a new officer, get us code enforcement. That's where that discussion came from. So
I think it's a good idea, Mayor.
Thank you. We can get rid of one vehicle. Anyway, just something to think about. I think the goal is to get another officer. So, how do we get there? Where do we want to be and how do we get there? Anyone have any other questions about the budget?
Yes, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Speaking of code enforcement, last year, Jay Asbury identified for us some properties that we could, I guess, foreclose on eminent domain. I can't even call it to mind. One in particular is within the CRA. I think it's between Grand Rondo and either Main Street or Cedar Street. I forget which, but anyway, that's an outstanding issue. So I know, there's always a cost attached with foreclosing on those properties. Those are the ones that he was looking at are some very blighted properties. So I don't know, I guess I would just like Michael and Debbie Peacock and maybe to get with Mr. Asbury and to see what it would cost us to move forward with that. I think there were two different properties that the city attorney had identified, and they're, this is part of getting rid of blight.
Right. Well, that's going to be on the budget for September. It kind of fell through the cracks. Maybe that's my fault. But I talked to Michael about funding. I said, I'd like to get rid of 2-3 buildings a year to catch up. We used to have 2,500 people. Well, how many people did we used to have in this town? 2,500?
More like 2,000.
2,000. And now we're down to 1,570 or whatever the number is.
Right.
So there's a lot of dwellings that are around that have been let go, and we've gotten rid of a lot of them. And there's several more to go. So I think if we start hammering these like 2-3 a year, so you're talking about, 20, 30 every 10 years, I think we can, in a long-term view, I think we can get rid of that blight. And Michael, you had some ideas of where that money, where I said, boy, I'd like to see at least, 20,000 in the budget for that. We figure 5 to.
Well, in your average, we took it down to single family residence, which is about 6,000.
Okay, right.
Up to that building, you don't talk about a commercial building you're taking down, and that's an example, even with the issues it has, you're talking about 22,000. So
and then you throw asbestos into it and it doubles the price.
Right. And some of the, if you get into lead paint and asbestos, you get some other things that drive that cost up. So if you want to start looking at that, if you want to start taking 3 buildings down, there's single family residences that are 1,000 square feet, maybe less, you're talking $6,000 to $8,000.
But you had, I don't know if it would be general funds you said they would come out of or what, that we wouldn't in this budget have an earmarked, say $20,000.
Yeah, that's where that came out of.
But that we do have the money, and as we see them, we will deal with them, and that 2-3 houses a year is a good
Target.
Yeah, a good target to have. And Harry, we've gotten rid of some bad ones, and it seems like it just takes a while. You know how it is. You clean something up in your house. You replace that carpet, and then you say, you know what? Those cabinets, I never noticed that before. Those cabinets need to be replaced. So and I've worked with Jay and code enforcement, and I said, I'd like to see the top 5. Give me 5 dwellings that we can work on getting rid of. And that's what Jay had presented a few months back. And that'll be on the agenda to start working on those, and we'll pick which ones to target in September.
Right, Mayor, if I could just follow up on that thought about getting rid of the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you mentioned, we have fewer residents now than we did in past years. I think when it's good to look at that big picture, we need to have more residents. We need to have, more people living in houses and paying ad valorem taxes and spending money here. We just need more residents. One possible way to look at these properties is we do need to foreclose them and take ownership if they're blighted, but we might want to consider, instead of us just tearing them down, actually marketing these properties to whatever way, using a realtor, targeting, employed people like teachers, retirees, whatever. Because the goal, hopefully, is to not just get rid of the building, but to get someone to take hold of that property and use it for a home or a business. So I think we might want to consider ways that we could make these properties attractive to someone.
But, we had that Rick come in, and he's bought a couple of properties on Rocket and Bay,
Right.
and he's done great work. And
Yeah.
I think, and Harry, you'll hopefully agree with me, you have some of these streets that you get rid of those blighted homes that can't be rehabbed, and people will start taking care of their own property, because if you have a property and you're surrounded by houses falling down, you don't really feel the need to mow your lawn or what have you. But when you clean it up a little bit, people have a little bit more pride in their street and their neighborhood, and I think that's what's going to bring people in.
Correct.
People drive around if they're looking for property, and they see these blighted properties, and I think they think twice about moving to this town. So I think if we can get rid of the blight, I think everything else will fall in place.
Agree.
Right now, if you want to do that, and I just want to talk about, we have a line item on the law enforcement and for code enforcement abatement. Right now, we have $6,000. That's because of the one building we took down. If you want to, we'd have to raise that to, what number your expectation is and how many properties either you want to do eminent domain or you want to tear down.
Could we get funds from the CRA in Better Place?
You should be able to get funds if we're doing rehabs on them. I need to look at that. I need to look at
Well, and maybe that's the question.
About rehabs, if you're talking about tearing them down,
Tearing them down.
which we're trying to do in
I thought CRA was
Go ahead.
infrastructure.
It is for infrastructure. What I'm getting at is, like, if you wanted to do it and someone was tearing it down, buying it and doing a facade grant, that's one thing.
Right.
But we need to do improvements so people want to go there. Tearing it down necessarily mean that they're going to be there, because then they have to do improvements to either build something new.
Right. Okay.
In the case of residences, no. So.
And I can't remember, and I know you know who I'm going to talk about. Is it Bay Street? I may have the wrong street. All the way on the end on the left, there's a lady that lives there, always has the house well kept, really nice property. And then up from there, one piece of property is like a block, almost a shed that's just overgrown. I don't know if the roof is still on it or not. And, I think it would go a long way. If that was cleared, as an example, somebody might go in and buy that property because it's already nice with a couple of houses on either side of it. I don't think you know which street I'm talking about. Maybe it's wrong.
You're talking about the end of Bay at Grove?
It's either Bay or
Okay.
she wanted us to cut down some trees. Was it her and her daughter or something at the end of the street? You remember that after the storm, they wanted us to trim trees or something? I can't remember. I'll see if I can. But anyway,
We could talk about that later. We don't know.
Yep.
We're trying to figure that out.
We can.
Okay.
We need to put our focus on Main Street at large. We definitely. Have anybody contact you, Mayor? I told him.
No, did you get a hold of that gentleman?
He haven't contacted you?
He has not that I know of. No.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could give him my phone number, have him call me. I'll go over and visit him. We'll talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I took some pictures of the backside and the side facing
It's terrible.
When I first moved here, boy, things, if you don't take care of them here in Florida, they turn bad in a hurry with the weather and growth. Okay, anything else on the budget? Questions?
Anything else? Have any other questions?
Well, when is our next, when do we consider the budget next? When will this come back with revisions?
September
Yes.
for the regular meeting.
Oh, that's the final.
No, that's the
I mean, that's
final.
the
That's the
first
final?
vote.
That's the first vote, yes.
What it just popped in my
The
head.
commission date was when we would go for the first hearing of the
Yes,
budget.
so if, we gotta clean this up though before then and then look at it.
Yeah, well, we can clean this up and then get it out.
I did talk a month or two ago about specifically mileage for myself going to Palaca for some of these meetings. Now, everything has been Zoom for several months now, including the chamber meeting I had a couple days ago and multiple other meetings. But when I've been going to these meetings, it costs money. And when I put in for mileage, it has come out of, because I guess they didn't know where else to pull from. And I don't have a suggestion really, out of the education fund. I think, is it how much is set aside for each person for education or meetings for each elected official? 1,000, 1,000?
We're getting that.
1,200.
1,200?
1,200. So that's where that was getting I've been put in for mileage, and I was being paid out of my $1,200, my $1,200, and that got eaten up. And I'm wondering if the commission would want to consider a mileage fund or something, because these are meetings, animal control, logic. Often I go to the county commission meetings when there's something that relates to the city. I'm also on the, by being mayor, on the waste disposal committee. And they'll have me sit up front for that. So, there's 2 or 3 meetings a month that I'm going to, or was going to, in Palaca. And I'm asking that the commission consider maybe setting aside, I don't know, $1,000 for gas. Remember now, the city manager is getting $250 a month, I think, which I'm not complaining about. And that's for doing city business with the car. And I'm not asking for that, but I need to get to some of these League of City meetings too. And if there's no money in there, I can't go.
Well, Mayor.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
a line item for that.
Do we want to create a line item?
Mayor,
Go ahead, Michael.
I have a solution for that
Okay.
to kind of solve that problem. We have a few vehicles. We have several vehicles. One of them is code enforcement. It's only used part-time.
Right.
We schedule meetings. We can have it, make sure it's gassed up and just schedule it and then have those things available. We have that in the community van.
Okay.
Those are two vehicles that if you need that could
That would be perfect. When I brought that up to Patrick early on when I was mayor about using the code enforcement vehicle, it's no. So,
It used to be the city manager vehicle, so.
okay, that's fine.
Mayor, if I can-
Sir.
Mayor,
Sir.
maybe it's none of my business, but if you wanted to use, one of the reasons we designed that van to say Crescent City Community Services, there's no police markings on that. It was so that we could use it for stuff like that with the fire, not just the police department, for events. And I mean, if anybody wants to use that, that gets our name out there.
Okay.
So
Right.
I am perfectly happy with that as a solution. So
and
I
we will make
withdraw
sure it's
asking
clean
for
and
it.
gassed up for you anytime anybody goes on a meeting.
Very good. All right. Commissioner DeVito.
Right. So my question is kind of 2-part. One, if Patrick Kennedy said no to your using a city vehicle to go to meetings, I would kind of want to know why. Particularly, does our insurance cover it? Are there any liability issues? I have no idea, but I think that's important to consider. There must have been a reason he said no.
I don't think you like me.
Maybe he thought you, maybe he saw you in the golf cart and thought you were not a good driver.
That's probably what it was.
I don't know, just in case Jay Asbury's not here, you know, I know a lot of companies left off the company car because something about liability issue. So just close the loop on that. And then what actually happens in terms of the budget? Like, for example, not the mayor's because he's used it for mileage, but there was money allocated for all of us to go to conferences this year. We did not go to conferences.
Right,
So,
and I'm thinking about that also.
and actually, so, and it turns out we had talked about me going to the CRA conference in October. I just checked, that is going to be virtual. They're canceling the whole Sawgrass thing. The redevelopment conference that would have been taking place in Ponte Vedra at Sawgrass. So you can see what that's going to do to the tax base up there. But what happens specifically to the other commissioners' education and conference fund that we didn't use? Can we carry that over and allocate that for, I mean, what happens to it? The money was there, it didn't get spent.
If you
I
don't
think it ought to be carried over.
spend, if you don't spend it, it's not spent. We don't carry anything over.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
It just goes in a big pot.
That go to the bed.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. What does it go into the reserves?
Whatever money is left over that's not used goes into reserve. That money is not really designated, not used. It's just a budget item. It's a budget line item that
Right.
we could spend this if we need it, but it's not, you don't get it back if you don't spend it or not spend it, you don't get it back. It's just
Right, but okay, but Debbie, last year we carried over $75,000. So how, maybe you'll explain this to me later, how that works. Maybe I'll get you on the phone or come by and you'll explain that to me maybe.
Well, we just look at what's left over, what we think is going to be left over in the bank. The bank
Okay.
not for general ledger,
Right.
general fund.
Right,
And we look out and see what kind of bills we got coming in.
okay,
And then we try to put money into the reserves. If there's going to be money for reserves and we still have an abundance of money in the account, then we can bring that forward.
okay, got it.
I think we did that for the first time last year, did we not, Debbie?
We usually bring 20,000 is what we've been carrying forward. And last year we knew we was going to have more money
Okay,
left over in the checking account. So we knew we had some expenses that we wanted to take care of for the 2020 budget year. So we just brought that forward. Once I see what the bills and all are, we already proposing if we get a police officer, we're going to have to bring that line up.
mhm,
And that's where the unspent money, I'm going to say the bulk of it has in the last 2 or 3 years, as I mentioned earlier, were these budgeted for but unfilled police positions. And that's what, you know, we were without a chief for 6 months or 9 months. We were understaffed police-wise for a man or two. So all that money is not paid out in payroll and was unspent at the end of the year in the
Correct.
past. So I don't think we have as much as we have had in the past.
right. Okay. But that,
All right. Anybody else?
Everything we bring forward is what we don't put in reserves. So if you want money to go into the reserves, then you can't bring so much forward.
Right.
okay.
All right, when are we going to have another budget meeting?
Do we need one?
I would think so to me, because I don't know who all's out there listening or whatever, but to me, it would make sense to have a workshop where we could see how the numbers look after these suggestions.
After we make the adjustments?
How about
Right.
if we meet at 4 or 5 o'clock on September before the meeting, the regular meeting? Do you want to do that?
We've done that before.
What,
That's all right with me.
We're just looking at that. Hold on a minute.
We come out, well,
It'll be the 9th of September.
That's fine. September, what's that, the 10th?
9th.
ninth,
The 9th is a Wednesday. You want to have it the night before?
No,
we-
No, the
Yeah.
10th, the 10th.
the
It's a
10th.
Thursday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Thursday.
the 10th at 5 o'clock, Mayor.
Yeah, you think an hour is enough time?
I really think so. That's about all we did today, wasn't it? But,
Well, we've done 2 hours.
But it's
Hour and a
really,
half, hour and a half.
looking
But
at.
we're not going over the whole budget. We're just looking at changes and how they're going to be affected. I think an
Yeah,
hour.
there's only like 3 or 4 items we're going to even talk about. There was
Right.
a lot of questions about things that were answered, which really had little to do about changing anything. Just
that.
explaining what they were and why they were.
But,
Go
Mayor,
ahead.
Could,
Yes.
the one piece that we have not included is, because this is a Zoom meeting, we did not have any public comment, which usually we have at a budget workshop. So I'm a little bit concerned, you know, we need to allow at some point for public comment.
We put out for public comment. We did not receive any.
Right, I know, but if it was an in-person public meeting, it's harder for people to comment. If it's an in-person public meeting, they can go, they can pick up we have stacks of the budget on the table, and they're sitting right there and they can ask their question.
And, and
So
the next
there-
meeting might be in person. So
Pardon?
you know, we don't know what we're going to do a month from now.
right,
Are we going to have, that's one of the ongoing things we talk about as we feel it. So it might not be, it might be a moot issue because if we're in person, then we'll figure out how we're going to get in-person comments, things like that.
right. But I'm saying people have not had the time, the public comment part, we have not devoted to. And if we just allow an hour, I'm just saying the public comment part has not really taken place. And we would, I think it would take up a little more time than an hour. So I think we need to consider that.
You want to meet at 4:30 then?
I would say at least. And
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, because we really want to get the people a chance to voice their opinion about the budget also. So,
All right,
Again?
4:30 it is. Any
Okay.
objection?
None.
Okay, that would make the meeting as long as this one.
Yes, an hour and a half at
That's
least.
fine. And if it ends early, then we got a little break.
Okay.
we can-
Buy
we
extra
can always
cookies.
take a break.
All right, without objection, 4:30 on the 10th of September, a workshop at 4:30 to 6 or wherever it takes us to. I'm sure there'll be a little break before we gavel in at 6.
Yeah, okay, sound good.
Yeah, okay. Anybody have anything else before we adjourn? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.